The lights never turned off in the slave bays. They buzzed with a low, sickly white hum that ate at your sleep, your thoughts, your will. It was always cold in a way that felt intentional, just warm enough to keep her alive, but just cold enough to remind her she didn't matter. Sci-Fi had stopped trying to measure time. The station above 6, Class 72 was lawless, orbiting nothing, built from welded scrap and ambition. They called it, the Gray Vein. The traders here operated outside imperial law and outside mercy. She had been here for, maybe 30 days. Or maybe 300. Her sense of time had faded, and so had her name, her voice, and most of her past. She remembered her mother's voice, soft and full of starlight. She remembered running barefoot through violet grass that glowed at dusk. She remembered a river made of floating stones and light bugs. And then she remembered fire. They hadn't even announced themselves. The Empire's destroyers fell from the sky like shattered moons, without a word. Sci-Fi's people weren't soldiers. They had no weapons, no planetary defense. They had art, music, empathy. The invaders had no use for that. They harvested the planet in hours. Cities burned from orbit. Those who fled were gunned down or taken. Sci-Fi remembered hiding beneath a bridge of woven root glass, watching her brother's body fall like a cut vine. She hadn't cried that day. Just gone numb. The crying came later. Now, her world was 6 by 4 meters. A cage with mesh bars and reinforced bolts. She was one of 8 in the row, but the only one in her section marked with a red symbol, untrained, unspeaking, unsold. Her skin had faded from seafoam green to a dull pale, the way her people's skin changed under stress. The glow along her collarbone, once a pattern of proud family lineage, was now dim, almost gone. The others didn't talk to her. Most of them couldn't. They came from different systems. One of them, a 4-armed creature with skin like cracked glass, had tried to speak once, but his mouth was full of broken teeth. Traders didn't want pets with too much bite. So she sat in silence. In cold. And she waited. Not for rescue. Not for hope. Just for end. Today, something shifted. She felt it first in the vibration of the floor, so subtle that most wouldn't notice. But her people were sensitive to frequencies, to the energy of motion. It felt like a pattern shift in the station's security grid. Someone had entered the bay using a non-standard route. Her heart, which usually beat with slow resignation, picked up. She didn't lift her head. Too many times had curiosity earned her bruises. But then she heard it. Footsteps. Not heavy. Slow. Careful. Not like the guards, who stomped around with the confidence of cruelty. These steps were hesitant. They stopped in front of her cell. She heard a soft exhale. You're real. It was a voice. Low. Masculine. Human. The sound sent a shiver down her spine. Not fear, not exactly, just the shock of being addressed like a person, not a product. She looked up. His eyes met hers. He was ordinary. Not tall, not broad. Just lean. Tired. His skin was tan, his clothes old. Worn boots, a jacket with faded patches, dark hair that curled behind his ears. But his eyes, those were not ordinary. They were gray-blue, not cold, but like ocean clouds just before rain. He crouched, resting his arms on his knees. You don't belong in here, he said quietly. Sci-Fi didn't answer. Couldn't. I can get you out. Not for money. Not for trade. He paused. I heard you. Yesterday. Or maybe the day before. Crying. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. She shrank back. Not from fear. From disbelief. Humans didn't do this. They bargained. Bought. Abandoned. I'm Rail, he said. Just Rail. I'm not a rescuer. Not a soldier. Just a guy with a broken ship and a stupid conscience. She didn't believe him. But something in his tone made her listen. If you want to go, he continued, nod once. I'll do the rest. But you have to choose it. Sci-Fi stared. Her fingers curled tight around the mesh bar. Then, she nodded. Once. He moved fast after that. Quiet. Precise. He pulled a small tool from his boot, an ancient manual override stick, rare in this quadrant, and inserted it into the panel. A spark. A hiss. The lock clicked open. The door creaked. Sci-Fi flinched but didn't move. Rail stood, taking a step back, hands up. You're free. She stared at the open cage like it was a trick. Then, barefoot and slow, she stepped out. The metal underfoot felt wrong, too soft, too clean. Rail didn't touch her. Didn't lead. Just turned and said, this way. And she followed. They moved through half-lit corridors. Rail clearly knew the blind spots. They passed only one patrol, a pair of black market enforcers smoking spice, but Rail led her behind a fallen crate stack and waited until they passed. He didn't speak again until they reached a sealed hangar door. My ship's in there, he murmured. It's not much. But it flies. And it's mine. He keyed the panel. It buzzed once. The door groaned open. Inside was a vessel barely holding together, mismatched plating, burned scars on the left engine, and one broken exterior light flickering like a dying star. The words on the hull were mostly worn away, but she caught the last letters, yet Howl. Sci-Fi stared. Ugly, he said with a shrug. But home. She nodded once. Inside the ship, the lights were dim and warm. The air smelled like engine oil, coffee, and something herbal. Rail motioned toward a bench near the cockpit. You can sit. Or lie down. Or throw up. Whatever you need. She chose to sit, folding her legs beneath her. He slid into the pilot's chair and ran diagnostics. We'll hit dark space lanes, he said. No trace. No beacons. Won't be fast, but it'll be safe. She didn't understand half the words, but the tone told her he meant them kindly. What's your name? He asked, eyes still on the console. She hesitated. Then touched her chest. Sci-Fi. He smiled. Not wide. Not fake. Nice to meet you, Sci-Fi. The takeoff was rough. She clung to the seat, eyes wide. The rumble of the ship pressed against her chest, unfamiliar and terrifying. He must have noticed. First time off-world under your own will, huh? She nodded. It'll get better. She looked at the stars streaking past the viewport. Endless black. Dots of light. It wasn't beautiful yet. It was too empty. But it was outside. Outside the cage. Outside the pain. She didn't know what she was heading toward, but it was hers. That night, if it could be called night in space, he gave her a blanket. A soft one. Not station issued. You hungry? She shook her head. Thirsty. Pause. Then nod. He handed her a metal cup with filtered water. She drank slowly, trying not to choke. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, he said, settling on the floor across from her. She studied him. Why? She finally asked. Why what? Why help me? He was quiet for a long time. Then, because someone helped me once. And I failed them. I never got the chance to return the favor. She tilted her head. And, maybe, he added, softer, because I saw your eyes. And I didn't want them to go dark like mine did. Siri said nothing. But she didn't look away. She slept curled on a couch in the cargo bay, under 3 blankets and beside a low-light heater. He kept to the cockpit, eyes on the scanners. But sometime in the night, she heard music. Soft, instrumental. Played over the calm speakers. Gentle notes. Old Earth music. She didn't understand the words. But she understood the feeling. It felt like a promise. That tomorrow, maybe, would not be worse. That maybe someone, just one person, had looked at her and seen more than survival. Maybe, in some quiet way, that meant she still mattered. Maybe that was love. Or maybe it was hope. And maybe, for now, that was enough. The first time Rail saw her, she was folded so small he thought she might be dead. He'd come to the gray vein for parts. Old capacitor rods, a COM interface that didn't glitch every 6 hours, maybe even a second-hand NAV drive if he got lucky. He wasn't there for justice, or rebellion, or mercy. He was there because his ship was dying, and his accounts were dry, and he didn't want to think anymore. Then he heard her. Not words. Not a scream. Just, the sound of someone trying not to break. He didn't go looking for her right away. He sat at the bar. Stared at a glass he didn't drink from. Tried to forget that he'd heard anything at all. He failed. Something about the sound, it didn't fade. It stuck in his spine like a fragment of ice. He thought of Nara. Of her last breath, the one he'd missed. The one he never got to hear. So he went. And now here they were, floating in a ship older than half the sector, with a girl whose name tasted like stars and silence. Siri. She hadn't spoken since the night before. Not since she'd curled up in the back cabin and finally slept. He hadn't expected thanks. Didn't want it. Didn't even want trust. But he felt her, like gravity. Quiet. Steady. Full of weight. The quiet howl groaned as he brought her out of hyperskip. Something sputtered in the left engine, again. He slammed the console with a flat palm. Don't die on me now. The ship rumbled in protest. They were somewhere near the Drusk corridor, past the dead moons, a place where patrols didn't run and the stars were too distant to look friendly. Perfect. He stood, stretched, cracked his back. Then walked to the rear cabin and leaned against the doorway. She was awake. Sitting on the floor, legs crossed, her hands cradling a dented mug of warm protein tea. She stared at the wall like it held answers he couldn't see. We're out, he said softly. She looked up. Don't worry, they won't find us. A long pause. Then, for how long? Her voice was still hoarse, still low. But there was strength in it. He could hear it, even if she couldn't. He rubbed the back of his neck. I've got tricks. Old ones. Coded jumps, black market routes, untraceable ports. They'll be chasing ghosts for a while. Siri set the mug down. They always catch up eventually. He nodded. Yeah. But maybe not tomorrow. That was the best he could offer. And to his surprise, she nodded. As if that was enough. They ran low on fuel 3 days later. He knew it was coming. The howl was efficient in the way that dying things often are, making do until it couldn't anymore. He didn't tell her at first. She needed rest. Food. Peace. Whatever fragments of it he could give her. But when the warning started blinking red, he had to speak up. There's a drift market nearby, he said, while she was helping stack filters in the back. Old orbital farm converted into a trading ring. No imperial presence. But it's sketchy. Siri looked up. How sketchy? It's run by Kia. What's that? He smiled faintly. Not a what? A who? Kia was trouble. Always had been. They'd met years ago during a failed salvage op where she'd stolen his coordinates, hacked his ship, and made off with half his engine. Then, for reasons she never explained, she returned the engine 2 weeks later, only spray-painted it with the words "Earn it next time, baby pilot." She was an art smuggler. A data thief. And a mess of contradictions. But she had resources. And if he was honest, she might be the only one who'd deal with him now. So they went. The drift market was docked to a hollow asteroid, ringed with neon signs and surrounded by floating debris. Its entrance was a giant sculpted mouth made of welded starship parts that opened when a ship approached. Sci-Fi stared at it from the viewport. "Is it eating us?" "Yeah," he said. "Symbolic, probably." They docked. The station smelled like spice smoke and recycled sadness. Everything was dim, gold-tinged, flickering with signs and music that never quite matched. Kia found them before he could find her. "Rail Halen, you outdated space rat," she called from across the hall, arms wide. He winced. "I knew I should have worn a disguise." She laughed, throwing arms around him. She was part human, part something else. Her skin was marked with shifting tattoos that responded to light, and her hair was braided with copper wire. Then she saw Sci-Fi. Her voice dropped. "You brought company." Sci-Fi's eyes narrowed. "This is Sci-Fi," Rail said. "She's traveling with me." Kia's eyes flicked between them. Sharp. Calculating. Then, to his surprise, softened. "Right. Well. Come on then, lovers. Let's get you fed before your ship dies." Sci-Fi didn't speak much that night. But she watched. She watched Kia like she was a riddle. And Kia, for all her flair, didn't press. She offered food, fuel chips, and silence. Later, when Sci-Fi went to rest, Kia pulled Rail aside. "That girl's hunted." "I know. You know why?" "Yes." Kia's voice was unusually gentle. "And you're getting involved because—" Rail sighed. "Because I couldn't not." Kia leaned in. "You're not the saving type, Rail. You're the surviving type. Maybe I'm tired of that." Kia didn't laugh. She nodded. "I'll get you what you need," she said. "But you owe me." "I always do." They stayed 2 days. Rail tried not to think about how much he liked hearing her voice, even when she said very little. He tried not to watch the way she stared at stars like they were old friends. He tried not to feel anything. But when she smiled, just once, at something he said, his heart forgot how to be cautious. On the 3rd morning, Kia was gone. So were their ship codes. "She sold us out," Rail muttered, slamming the panel. "She sold us out." Sci-Fi was already moving. She grabbed the pack they kept by the engine, rations, tools, supplies. "We can still leave," she said. "Without codes we can't clear the drift's AI locks. Then we steal them back." He stared. "You sure you weren't a smuggler in another life?" Sci-Fi looked at him, dead serious. "I've been a captive in this one. That's enough." They found Kia in her art vault. Surrounded by stolen memories, literal memory crystals encoded with moments, smells, voices. Her newest prize was something rare, an emotional imprint painted into a digital wave form. A sun painting, made by her dead lover. When Sci-Fi saw it, she didn't speak. She sang. Just one note. Soft. Harmonic. The way her people once shared stories. The wave painting reacted. Bloomed. Kia stared. "You're one of them," she said. "I didn't know." Rail stepped forward. "Give us back the codes, Kia." But Sci-Fi put a hand on his chest. "Wait." She walked to the painting. Sang again. A full phrase this time. The painting shifted again, showing a memory of Kia and the woman she lost. Tears welled in Kia's eyes. "You can feel them," she whispered. "In the paint." "I can hear what you felt," Sci-Fi said. Kia dropped the codes. "Go," she said. "Before I change my mind." They left that hour. As the ship powered back into space, Rail watched her from the pilot's seat. "That was dangerous." Sci-Fi shrugged. "So's living." He smiled. "You're changing." She met his gaze. "You made space for it." Rail didn't answer. But in the silence between them, something warm settled. Not safety. Not yet. But the beginning of trust. The first spark of something like love. They didn't sleep that night. The stars were too loud. The fear was too close. But Rail watched her, curled up in the co-pilot's seat, not crying, not flinching. Just there. Alive. Free. And something in him healed. Not all the way. But enough. Kia always said she didn't believe in ghosts. And yet she kept letting one follow her across half the damn galaxy. Not the kind with chains or blood or glowing eyes. The kind that smiled at you in the last memory crystal you had left. Railing down the corridor of her vault, she tapped a knuckle against the lock panel. Her rings chimed against the metal. Melodic. Meant to distract her from the guilt, like so many other sounds in her life. Behind her, the hollow walls flickered between stolen art, anti-imperial street graffiti from the Sanghara moons, a silk painting from a planet that no longer existed, an old encoded symphony that changed depending on your emotional state. And, of course, the centerpiece, the wave painting. The last gift from Arian. Kia sat in front of it now, legs crossed, braid coiled around one shoulder. The room pulsed with dim light and unspoken memory. She whispered to the painting, even though she'd sworn she was done with that. "You'd laugh if you saw her. Sci-Fi. The girl with the storm in her eyes and the music in her bones." Kia had known from the second Rail brought her in that something was off. Not wrong, just rare. Like air too clean for a place like the Drift Market. At first, she assumed Rail was doing what Rail did best, saving things far too broken to survive. He'd always been like that. Even back when she'd met him, young, too serious, half in love with every cause he didn't fully understand. But this girl? She wasn't a project. She was a scar. A hymn. A mirror. And that made Kia uneasy. Because Kia had never been good with reflections. The night before she'd betrayed them, Kia had watched Sci-Fi sit in the corner of the taproom, staring into a cup of water like it held the map of the galaxy. She wasn't afraid. That's what struck Kia most. She should have been. The drift was full of liars and killers and worse, and the girl had clearly been hurt before. But she sat like she was already past fear. Like she'd made peace with whatever end came. Kia hated it. And respected it. And feared it. Because that kind of girl didn't live long. She hadn't planned to sell them out. Not really. Just, trade a whisper. A location ping. To a buyer she didn't fully trust. Just enough to get some imperial eyes off her back. But then Sci-Fi had sung. The painting was simple. 3 concentric suns overlapping, painted with resonance waves instead of pigment. Encoded with Arian's voice, if you listened close enough. Her laugh buried in the low end. Her fear trapped in the static. Kia had spent years trying to unlock the full code. Even with her own memory keyed into the encryption, it never opened fully. Then Sci-Fi walked in. And hummed. Just one note. The painting bloomed. Not visually. Emotionally. Kia felt the memory shift like it was rewiring itself to fit Sci-Fi's presence. And for a moment, Arian's laugh was clear as it had been the day they met. Not broken. Not strained. Just full of sun. Kia had nearly dropped to her knees. And when Sci-Fi stepped back, cheeks damp but steady, she said, "You loved her." Kia hadn't answered. "Didn't need to. I gave them the codes." She said it aloud, even though no one was in the vault but her. The painting didn't respond. Ghosts didn't judge. They just waited. She sent the ping first. Encrypted burst to the buyer, "Forget the girl. I was wrong. Wrong person. They'd be pissed." She didn't care. Then she called Rail. "I'm an idiot," she said. "You're not wrong," he replied dryly. "What changed?" Kia looked at the painting. At the encoded sun. "Someone reminded me what it costs to lose the only person who makes the universe tolerable." He didn't answer. Just said, "We're leaving in 10. Get us our codes. Already in your inbox, baby pilot." She hung up before she could say anything else. She found Sci-Fi waiting at the airlock. Alone. She tilted her head. "Rail?" "Final system checks," the girl replied. Kia nodded. "You came instead of him." "You're not his ghost," Sci-Fi said gently. "You're mine." Kia blinked. "What?" "I know what it's like to lose someone and pretend it didn't break you." Sci-Fi's voice didn't shake. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. "I didn't come to yell," Sci-Fi added. "I came to say, thank you. For changing your mind." Kia laughed. A short, broken sound. "You're thanking the person who almost sold you out. You didn't finish the betrayal. That's worth something." After Sci-Fi left, Kia stood there for a long time. Then she went back to her vault, stared at the wave painting, and finally whispered, "You'd like her." And for the first time since Arian died, she believed that maybe, just maybe, she could like someone again, too. Not romantically. Not yet. But maybe as something softer. Maybe as hope. In the old days, before the machines taught themselves silence, the Whisperkin used to say that sound was memory made visible. Maylan never forgot that. They could still remember what their mother's voice felt like, soft as sun-warmed silk, wrapped in the tone of dusk. Whisperkin didn't hear sound the way others did. They felt it. The resonance, the vibration, the harmonic thread woven beneath even the quietest syllables. And when pain entered a voice, it was like tasting metal. That's what they tasted when the ship limped into their orbit, one engine coughing, the hull coated in carbon scoring and luck. Metal. Burned memory. Old pain trying to survive. They knew someone on that vessel was dying. And someone else was trying desperately to keep them alive. They were in the greenhouse chamber when the distress signal came in. Among the thick blooming vines of Ilaria root and the hovering fire blossom spores, Maylan let their fingers drift through soil that pulsed with low-frequency calm. Whisperkin grew their ships like other beings grew families, one seed at a time, coaxed into structure by melody and breath. Their ship was called the Indigo Trace. Not because of color, but because of the memory it carried, of a lover's final song, recorded during a thunderstorm that never ended. The trace shimmered when it felt others nearby. And that day, it pulsed with urgency. Maylan turned their attention outward. And heard her. The girl's voice wasn't speaking, not in language. But her frequency, it sang of pain so deep it had no bottom. They'd heard grief before. Heard warriors break in silence, lovers sob over calms, prisoners hum to stay sane. But this was grief as identity. Not something carried. Something inhabited. Maylan activated the docking sequence. "Come, stranger," they whispered aloud, voice soft and melodic. "This place is sanctuary." The ship, a battered old freighter, docked with effort. It leaked sound, badly tuned systems, warped hull resonance. Maylan flinched at the auditory chaos but stood calmly in the welcome corridor, hands clasped. They wore no weapons. Only the Whisperkin ceremonial braid over their shoulder and a robe woven with bioresonant thread. The hatch hissed open. A human stepped out first. Pale, exhausted, eyes sharp even behind weariness. His voice hummed a protective frequency, a guardian tone, familiar in many survivors. Behind him came the girl. Sci-Fi. Maylen recognized her not from name or face, but from the tone. The music of her presence was fractured and beautiful. She moved like someone who hadn't yet decided if the world was real. "We don't have anything to trade," the human said cautiously. We need help. Medical. Repair. Food." Maylen inclined their head, the way their kind did when offering welcome. "You may stay," they said. "No payment required." The man blinked. "Why?" "Because someone once let me stay," Maylen said. Sci-Fi didn't speak much the first day. She kept to the healing chamber, where the moss-lined floor and resonant pools helped stabilize frayed nervous systems. Maylen monitored her vitals without touching her, using only harmonics. They matched tone, coaxed her into rest, and when she finally slept, her body emitted a low lullaby, a subconscious hum only a Whisperkin could hear. It was the sound of a child who had been taught that love always ended in fire. Maylen wept for her. Silently. Always silently. The man, Rael, hovered. Not possessive. Just present. The way some creatures instinctively protect wounded kin. Maylen guided him to the listening orchard, a chamber where sound waves grew like vines. They sat beneath a canopy of tone fruit and let the ambient song of the orchard calm his system. "She means something to you," Maylen said. Rael nodded. "I don't know what it is yet. But yeah. She does. You grieve someone else." Rael's jaw clenched. "That obvious?" "Not obvious," Maylen corrected gently. "Audible." Rael looked around. "This ship is strange. It is alive. Like, biologically. Like emotionally," Maylen said. "It sings when it's content. Cries when it's damaged. Like all of us." Rael smiled faintly. "And you can hear all that? It is how we survive." On the second day, Sci-Fi came to find Maylen. She didn't knock, Whisperkin didn't use doors in the same way, and she seemed to know this instinctively. "You knew," she said simply. "I did. What do you know about me?" Maylen turned to face her. "I know your heart sounds like home," they said. Sci-Fi flinched. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because I don't have one anymore." "You're wrong." Her expression hardened. Maylen stepped closer. They raised a hand but did not touch her. "Would you like to speak?" they asked. "I've already said too much." "Then, would you like to sing?" Whisperkin didn't teach song the way others did. They evoked it. Maylen brought her to the singing basin, a pool of shallow resonance water tuned to mirror emotional states. When you stood in it, it translated what you felt into sound. Sci-Fi hesitated. But then, she stepped in. The basin glowed pale green. A single tone emerged. Then another. Discordant. Raw. And then, with shaking shoulders, she let go. The room filled with harmony and scream. Grief layered with beauty. Fear woven with memory. Maylen didn't interrupt. They simply stood in the stillness and listened. And when it was over, and Sci-Fi collapsed to her knees, breathless from the weight of her own voice, Maylen knelt beside her. And finally said the truth she most needed to hear. "Your voice is not broken." Rael came to her later. Sat beside her in the central chamber, watching light shift across the ship's living walls. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said. "Me neither. But I sang," her voice was almost disbelieving. "I heard it." She looked down. Did you understand it? I didn't need to, he said. I felt it. That's when Maylen knew. These two, they wouldn't end like the others. Not in fire. Not in silence. They'd carry each other. Imperfectly. Unevenly. But together. On the fifth day, Maylen brought them to the garden dome. You are well enough to leave, they said. But I hope you know, this place is always home if you choose it. Cyree looked out across the glowing fields. Thank you, she said. Not just for the rest. For the believing. Rael shook Maylen's hand. How do you do this? He asked. Maylen smiled. We listen. As the ship departed, Maylen stood at the docking window. They watched the old freighter spin away, leaving a wake of softened sound. And they whispered. Go gently, children of grief. Go bravely, children of song. And may your voices never be silenced again.